Hello. In this second look video, I'm going to talk about the ADX module. So right now I have a simple chart up loaded with Nano. I think for the purposes of just going out of the usual, I'm going to leave it where it's at. Let's find ADX. Okay, standard signal line. So we go in, turn off the signal line, and turn on the chart. Pretty straightforward and easy. And now we have a basic ADX where we actually have the DI plus, which is the green line, DI minus, which is the red line, and then the ADX indicator itself. So let's go straight into the settings. And you'll see all of the typical modulus framework harness information that I covered in the last video. The identifier, the indicator on indicator source, which is a yes or no, the source signal approach, whether or not you want confirmation or combination, and the kind of signals you want generated, buy, sell, or both. All the standard information that is necessary for all modulus framework components. Now let's move to the primary information. All modulus framework components let you use a ticker and a time frame. But let's move to the important part. The default configuration, the ADX length, is set to mimic the trend hunter out of the main Jackrabbit indicator. The trend hunter itself is obsolete by this, as it is simply far more capable. For example, let's take and move to one of my favorite numbers, which works well in many cases. Now the 25 is the threshold of which the ADX indicator begins to trigger for a buy or a sell, meaning that's the minimum it has to be on the chart or scale before it's considered a strong trend direction. I'm going to talk about the aggressive in a moment, but for now let's look at the chart. We have lows, we have highs, so forth. Your plus, your minus, and of course the ADX itself. Now let's look at a higher time frame. Let's go to the 5-minute. Since the higher your time frame, the more accurate your trend information is going to be. So let's set this to an aggressive state and see how it changes the chart. As you can see, an aggressive state has a direct impact. The aggressive state is important when you're combining other indicators, and rather than keeping the bar count, you want to actually use the indicator in a slightly different approach, meaning aggressively, so that it sees more opportunities. So it's something to be aware of when you are working with your charts, that you may or may not need an aggressive approach. And as you can see, the aggressive approach versus the non-aggressive approach has a direct impact in the number of signals that are produced. And of course, as I said, the keep signal count and then invert signals. Now, as I said previously, invert is a special case and needs to be used appropriate to a very specific situation. It is not something that you are always going to want to use. So for the most part, most of the time, this will remain as it is. Now that covers the primary. Let's come up here and find confirmation bias and turn it on. Confirmation bias shows up as the lower portion or below 0. So you actually see both indicators at once. Each indicator has its own capabilities, meaning you can tune this one completely different than you can tune your primary. Now the confirmation bias has all of the settings as the primary does. So you will need to be aware of just how you tune and look at things. And this is an example of where an aggressive state might be beneficial. It is something that you have to test and analyze carefully. For example, between the two, you now see that it has a buy signal here and a sell signal up here. So in this case, the confirmation bias has actually picked some very good trend properties. There are no substitutes to actually just playing with these numbers and looking for correlations. A lot of things can happen that can give you very good results. And they only happen when you actually take into account and try to really analyze the chart in detail. You don't need to do a whole bunch of crazy mathematics. The module does that for you. But you do need to pay attention to buys and sells and when they take place. For example, this particular one is going to accumulate 1, 2, 3, 4 different buys and then one sell signal. So it's going to average 4 positions into one sell. Now if your positions are $11, you're going to have a $44 position size total. The average is going to be of that value for the price point of the coin you are trading. And then of course your profit is going to be the percentage of that average. Simple, straightforward, and easy to attend to. ADX is one of the simpler modules that Jackrabbit Modulus has, and it is also one of the most useful modules, tongue-tied there, for finding trends. One of the benefits that ADX offers is you can use it on a higher time frame to help scalp out good opportunities that can then be represented in a lower time frame with other indicators as a confirmation. There are a lot of different potential possibilities that ADX can give you, but you do need to pay attention to the fact that smaller time frames don't always benefit because there's not enough historical information in a price action to accurately calculate a trend. This situation is a perfect example. The selling price is here, but you'll notice the entry buying price is up here, roughly a 5-cent difference. This would be a losing trade. Even if you average, the last purchase of the average is still slightly above or equal to the selling price. So in order to benefit from ADX, be sure you check the time frame carefully. You don't want false signals with the ADX. You don't need confirmation all the time, but this example shows just how well confirmation bias can work with a given situation. ADX is one of the easier algorithms to use with confirmation, but ADX also works extremely well with the DCA module as a trend hunter or a trend scalper. So there are many different approaches you can use ADX in, as a very simple direct methodology or as a very complex, finely tuned trend monitoring process. Take your time and be sure to look at all of your charts. When looking at the ADX indicator for long-term trends, it is important to remember that not all time frames will produce good results. In the case of Nano, we see that a long-term trend actually is not very favorable, and so this coin is better suited for trading shorter time periods. That is the process that you will have to look at on a consistent basis when you evaluate all of your coin choices. Some coins just do not work out well in every situation. For example, moving to Bitcoin, we see where a longer term trend actually can produce some fairly reasonably good results. But a shorter term trend may actually have a different point of view. Good case here is all of these buy signals occur above the sell signal. So for Bitcoin, a shorter term trend with ADX is not always going to be as profitable as a longer term trend with ADX. So be sure you constantly check all time frames before you settle on the time frame that you want to use for your module. Remember that the confirmation and the primary operate independent of each other, and be sure to test your directions carefully. There are many different factors you can use to develop a very nice and complete, yet simple trading approach with the ADX module. If you found this video useful, please hit the like button, ring that notification bell, and share this video with somebody you think might benefit. Until next time.